Okay. Ready? Jess, welcome to the Elevating Resilience podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So today I have a special guest, childhood friend, childhood teammate, kept in touch through the years, and just really excited about having her on to talk about leadership, family, and what athletics taught her. So Jess was my high school teammate at Shore Regional. She went on to play at Rutgers University.
Yep.
She got out. She coached a little while, got into education. She's been in education for 23 years, 15 of them in leadership position. Right now, she is leading the Middletown School District as a superintendent. She's a mom of 2 boys, and we're just going to dive right into what this all looks like now.
Great.
Let's
Great.
go.
I'm excited.
So, athletes. That's what I want to go into, all in athletes, the whole thing. So tell us, what about athletics taught you to be in this awesome position you are in now?
So I think, athletics, there are so many takeaways. I mean, obviously the victories are important, the relationships you develop, but I think understanding to be goal-oriented and also to be a part of a team, I think are the valuable aspects. The takeaways from those experiences really have shaped me in my leadership skills, my ability to be a good teammate, to lead teams, to really dig into something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And when I look back and reflect on my athletic career, I really do believe that those things have put me in a position where, I understand the dynamics of a team and how people within a team can motivate one another and really work towards a common goal to achieve something bigger than just a singular individual could.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah.
I just want to talk about something really special to me is like growing up. I mean, you took me to school almost every day, my junior and senior year. You were with me along the ride of what I went through at home and on the field, always supported me. And you were my captain my junior year, which was a tough year for me on all things. And I'd have to say, like, you accepted me even though I was different, even though I had an attitude at times. And you brought me along, which showed, like, back then that you knew that you had to motivate everybody, not just the ones that were easy to motivate. So I'm sure that helps you also in your career, like accepting everybody and everybody's differences. And one thing when I think about just being on shore and even in college is the connection piece, like having lifelong friendships. Like, so when you and I went to breakfast that day, we were talking and it stuck with me, and you talked about a book that you read called The Tipping Point, and I had asked you for advice, like what, and you said you're going to get to that tipping point. And it was like a couple weeks later where I texted you, I was like, I want you on the podcast, because that phrase like stuck with me. And it was cool to hear you talk about leadership, because it reminded me of like this driven girl on that hockey field. You didn't always have to say much, but it was your work ethic, and you just never settled. You just always, wanted the best for yourself and for all of us. So it's really cool. Yeah. That is my memory of Jess Pizzulli.
Oh,
I'm going to say it. Okay?
I know.
This is Jess Alfone. Awesome. And so as a mom now, I want to talk about like raising your 2 boys. What's the best part about being a mom?
I guess seeing them start to embody the values that I have. I mean, they're both athletes. They both play competitive soccer. And as a former athlete myself, that's hard as a parent to watch your child go through failure. Just as sweet seeing them successful, and you become, they say you wear your heart on your sleeve when you're a parent, and you truly do. I mean, every pain point, every victory you feel, and every success they have, you feel it as if it were your own. But I think the most rewarding part is starting to see, particularly my older one, who's in high school now, start to really mature and embody so many of the things that I value and my family values. My husband and I both value these things, work ethic, determination, grit, knowing and understanding that failure is a necessary part of the process, and that, failing, as long as you're failing forward, I think you have to look at failure also as feedback. we really, really negatively stigmatize failure, and that causes people to avoid failure, to not take calculated risks in whatever it is they're pursuing. So we've tried to instill in the kids that, look, like, failure is going to be a necessary part of what you do to get to the goal that you're trying to achieve for yourself. But you can't look at failure as a negative. You have to look at it as feedback to really propel you forward to the next step. Like that old adage, one step forward, two steps back. And understanding that you need to take that information as the feedback and then turn it into something positive. Because I also try to coach them a little bit, as much as they'll allow me, because they really like roll their eyes and say, stop lecturing me often. Try to coach them on, like, your mindset matters. Your mind is so powerful, especially when it comes to motivating, overcoming, those setbacks and being resilient in your process, and understanding that. And our kids today, they really live in a world where there's immediate gratification. So it really is more challenging than ever to motivate. I mean, my own two kids, I see that every day, to work long term and stay the course, even in the face of setbacks, because a goal, whether it's an academic goal, an athletic goal, a personal goal of some sort, it's going to take time. And understanding that even through those challenging pieces of the process, maintaining positivity and this glass half full perspective is really important, and using those struggles to fuel your eventual success. And those are the things that I really am starting to see come through with my kids. I also appreciate the fact that they really do emulate my work ethic, which I always tell them, you need to be able to control the controllables. And understanding that, I think, comes with maturity, but there are so many things that are outside of your control. So I always encourage them, work on the things that you have control over. How hard you work, how much effort you give, how fast you're going to run or how hard you're going to kick the ball. Yeah, comes with practice and time, but there is going to be a certain level off. But I always tell them, you can outwork everyone. That's in your control, whether it's on the field, in the classroom. And it's rewarding to see some of these things starting to evolve for them. And I think that's the best part of parenting, not only, kids, but kids that are athletes.
Because you coached for a while as well. A couple of years, right?
When I got out of, I swore I was not going into education. I said, I'm not doing it. My father was an educator. I'm just not. And then lo and behold, I end up coaching my senior year in college. I come back to my high school. I start coaching softball as one of the assistants. My sister at the time, my younger sister, was playing in high school. So I ended up coaching her, and then ended up staying there and coaching 3 seasons for a few years, and got my teaching certificate. And there I was in education when I swore I would not be. And here
What'd
I
you
am,
get your degree
23 years later. Psychology.
Oh, wow. I love that.
I thought, I really thought I wanted to be a child psychologist. I mean, I knew I wanted to work with kids, but I didn't think I wanted to be in education. But I found that I really enjoyed it. And I was like, wow, maybe this is my niche in the world, to be able to impact others in some way.
And so you talked about your dad.
Did
your dad teach you your work ethic?
Oh, yeah. My dad was a storied basketball coach. Definitely left his legacy on Red Bank Regional High School and the Shore Conference. Still is heavily involved. But he always had this very quiet way of just putting his head down and working hard. He was also really strong in his convictions, and he was very much a person who you trusted, because he had that relationship aspect really, really well done, in the sense of he connected with people, but he also had a high expectation of them. and he held them accountable, but he also was really empathetic
Mm-hmm.
and understanding, and really relatable.
Yeah.
And I think those are the pieces that I've taken from him, in that, I've always wanted to be the administrator or the person that people feel are real and authentic and relatable and empathetic, and understand that, like, outside of your career and your job and your responsibilities, where I engage with people, you have a whole nother life, and you're so many things to so many other people. So, when I look back at, like, what are the things that I took from my parents, it's really more so that the ability to connect with people and also have a high expectation, while at the same time balancing empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems to get harder now, like, about, like, that push and pull, especially as a mom. Like, how much do you push, but understand that you have to kind of understand. We go into their mental health and all of that kind of thing. But your dad did have it down. And when we spoke that morning, I just really loved what you were saying about your staff and what you're trying to do and the little things that you do in the district to make sure they're seen as humans before employees, which was really cool. That was neat. So now your journey to become an administrator, did you know right away that you wanted to lead?
Yes. I knew going into teaching that eventually I knew I wasn't going to be in a classroom forever.
Yeah.
I think I really started to realize that when I started coaching camps, because I always assumed a leadership role, whether it was, being an assistant to help the director, or being the head coach of a team, or, a myriad of things. And as I started to coach and get involved in camps, I ended up taking on more and more responsibility. And I knew that I had this instinctual ability, number one, to organize. I think that's important. Like, it's probably the type A oldest child thing that really serves me well. But, and I also felt that being able to communicate expectation in a way that not only motivates people, but also inspires them to want to follow through, I think is important. And I guess those are some of the other lessons that I took away from my time playing sports all the way through college, is that you need to be a leader that people want to follow, and not a leader that people feel like they have to follow. And I think that goes back to the relational aspect. I'm a believer that leadership at its core is about the relationship. All of those other things are secondary. Yeah. But if you really want to lead and be effective and purposeful in your leadership, then you have to spend a ton of time developing those relationships and really accumulating what I like to call emotional capital. Because then when things are challenging, or you ask people to follow through on something, that emotional capital matters. But it's reciprocal, but then, that to me is the core of successful leadership. Yeah. And also getting people to believe in something bigger than themselves. Yeah. And getting them to really act more selflessly to the greater good, whether that's a goal, of the organization, or, it could be a lot of things. And that's what we talk about with that tipping point, is getting more people than not to really buy into that, but also feel inspired that they're a part of something bigger than them.
Yeah, for sure. So when you started 15 years ago, you've grown, I'm sure, a lot when you think about all the different spaces, like, and what would be your, I would say, your resilience story from those 15 years as being a leader?
I think really coaching myself in the fact that failure is necessary.
I love that.
I definitely early on was a person that was acting not to fail. Whereas now I like to think that I take risks in order to expand. And I think pushing yourself, but understanding that, like, I'm going to put myself out there, but it may not be the result that I want right now. And I think that's what we have to remember, is that it's not about all the time the right now. I think, I think there's a right path and a wrong path, or a better path and a less good path. But I think just to be on the path is important. And even if you're not, at the pinnacle of whatever that goal would be, as long as you're on the right path, I think that there's motivation in that in and of itself. The other thing is, as I've kind of grown professionally, I've taken on bigger and bigger challenges. I heard this quote this morning and it really resonated me. And it was from the Duke women's girls basketball coach. And she said to her team, "You just have to learn to do hard better."
Ooh.
And I was like, wow, okay, that sits with me. I aspire to this do hard things mentality, because I think the only things that change you are things that challenge you. Even though, again, that goes back to you're probably going to fail at some point on that path. But, doing hard things better and understanding that there's more to fear in easy than there is to fear in hard, I think are important pieces to always remind yourself. And I've coached myself on that to the point where now I'm trying to coach other people to believe in that kind of mentality.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and Inky Johnson was talking, and he was talking about the patience piece that you've kind of referred to a lot today, is this patience of, he says, you keep trying, but even though there's this mentality of grind, there's a patience aspect to it of when you take time to stop and breathe. And that's something that I've been really talking about resilience lately, is resilience is also the pause and the breath and the reflection and the pivot sometimes to say, all right, I am going 100 miles an hour, but if I don't stop, then I'm not going to hear if that 100 miles an hour is worth it.
Right.
And I didn't ever look at it like that. I mean, I just thought you go 100 miles an hour, all in, right? But now it's totally shifted me. And it's funny that you talked about that, because I was listening to it this morning and I'm like, wow, we all need that patience. You got to wait. The goal
Sometimes
comes.
you have to go slow to go fast.
Yeah, for sure. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Definitely.
Yeah.
So the one question I wanted to ask you was, now that you're in a bigger district and you're leading more people, and you don't know if you're making a mark, because there's just such a bigger mark to make. How do you measure your small wins?
It's interesting. I guess in the interactions that I have with people, I'm very much a believer in when you're a leader in an organization, particularly a big one, you really need to be out there and you need to be engaging with people. I think boots on the ground kind of mentality is important for getting the pulse on what truly exists. And also continuing to kind of cultivate those relationships, because if you're sitting in an office behind your desk, as much as your reputation can carry you to some extent, that will run out eventually.
Yeah.
So I think, again, going back and talking about that investment in the emotional capital of things. So in those interactions, I often get a read on, is there an impact? And I mean, people, giving feedback very explicitly, it feels so much different with you in charge, or you're the best, or little things along the way. And also the biggest compliment I think I've gotten so far in the impact is the fact that it's so different now. And I think people appreciate the fact that I'm a positive person. I am always aspiring to that glass is half full mindset. I never believe that a problem is insurmountable or a problem should define us. I think problems are opportunities, quite frankly. And I think when you reframe that for people, the positive mindset becomes contagious. So in those small interactions, I can see that those things are really starting to take hold. Now, in a big place, are we at our tipping point? By no means. But every small little piece chips away at that over time. And eventually you get to that place where that becomes the mentality of the organization or the group or the team or whatever it is that you're trying to kind of evolve. So, those interactions are the places that I measure those things. It's not in a statistic or a survey or a poll or, whatever it might be, or a Facebook post.
Yeah.
It is in those small moments and those little interactions where I truly can tell that, wow, these individuals who are part of this collective enormous team feel empowered. They feel valued. They feel important. They feel, they feel that they're heard and seen. And it really allows them to not only act in a way that's better for our kids, but also for themselves from a mental health perspective. And I think that's really important because we talk often about the mental health of kids and students, and it's so important. But our educators are often a second thought in that conversation. And I think it's really important for our educators who are working with our kids, the adults of the organization, to have that same attention paid to their mental health and the fact that, like, they need to feel good about not only themselves, but the organization, and their connection to whatever it is the overall goal or value of what we're trying to accomplish there. So that's really been the core of what I've, tried to do to start.
Yeah. Which is so hard. So I was just in Lacey and I've been loving this, working with the teachers, which I never thought would ever happen, right?
That's so cool, right?
It's so cool. And their mental health is so important. And I often say, like, when I follow these leaders who are speaking in this world and they're talking to the CEOs of the world, and the CEOs are treating their businesses that they have to produce this product and they need their employees to be at the top of their game with their mental health. So now you go into the education world, and I'm sure you know this, it's changed into sort of a business. Right. And so, we want education to be treated as a business because of all the cuts coming on you guys and how to manage everything. So now, how do you take the time, though, besides small interactions, to take care of educators' mental health when you also have the students' mental health? You do have to reach test scores. You do have to do all of these things. I mean, what more could possibly be done for the teachers to recognize? Because one of the things I say to them is, hey, I was married to a superintendent. He's also, things are coming down on him, and his mental health was suffering. And then now he's going to take and worry about your mental health. And then you're worrying about the kids' mental health. So it's like a systemic approach.
Sure.
So my thing is because you're so well-versed and I love what you're saying, is how would you say we could do better with the teachers' mental health?
I think as people that, as leaders in a school district that are in charge of setting expectations and, scheduling and communicating messages, I think we have to be really mindful of time for people and how that time, impacts their mental health, that kind of rat race. I always tell the story of a teacher who I had as working with me many years ago as an administrator. And, that individual used to come late to school every day. But I knew that individual had, I think, 3 kids and was probably on this white knuckle drive to get to work, to get her kids to where they needed to be. Could I have drawn a line and said, look, you're late, you got to figure it out? I didn't, because I knew the dynamic. And so instead, in that moment, my question was, are you okay? Take a breath. And I think having that awareness of those things that sit outside of the educator's job responsibilities, and understanding that they're a wife, a husband, a partner, a mom, a dad, a caregiver, whatever it might be, they are so much more than what we see between the hours of 8 and 4. And when we create schedules or hold or accountability features in an organization, whether it's submitting lesson plans or, you're going to be here between this hour and this hour, I think we have to hold on to that perspective, because we have to be, and what I say to my colleagues is, I want to be the humanistic organization. I want to be the administrative team that values our educators as professionals, but more importantly, as humans who have so much more in their world than just what we see here. And I do believe that that is the singular most important way to support teachers' mental health, because most of what I believe the mental health or, negativity comes from are teachers feeling like they have impossible demands and like this feeling of hopelessness and this inability to meet the expectation no matter what they do. So I think it's our responsibility to lessen that burden and allow them to know that, like it's okay for you to do all of those other things in your world. Because somewhere along the line, I think this happens to all of us at one point in time, we become lost in our job. Yeah. And we feel like that's the end all to be all. Yeah. And it's not. Yeah. So I think what we're trying to accomplish in Middletown is really being that humanistic, empathetic organization. And I think that in and of itself goes so far for our staff's mental health.
Yeah. Never said anything special to Lacey or Raritan, but like I just basically said those things. Hey, I see you. I feel you. Here's a space to talk about it, but here's the other side of it. Here's the perspective you need. Right. And the feedback was just like, thank you for just giving us time to just be. Right. And they said, like, we just want to know we're humans again in this big, busy world of the ever-changing demands of education. And it was neat to like really just see them laugh. And like one of the activities I do is like, hey, stand up if you lost a loved one, have been through a divorce, battled. And everybody in the room shares some story that they're going through that doesn't have to do with signing in. I could have worked for you. I was late every day.
I would have been like, hey, no worries.
Go ahead. You're always late, Ange.
That's fine.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to know is what fills Jess's cup? What do you do for you? I know you're a big workout person.
Oh, I'm an exerciser.
Yes.
That is my thing. Like 100%, that is my time. I schedule it into my day. It is a non-negotiable, probably 6 days of the week. And I do it for physical fitness because I want to live a long life for my kids and, you want to feel good, et cetera, et cetera. And I've kind of shifted it. Like, I'm not a competitive athlete anymore. Like, I'm definitely getting
Are you sure you've shifted?
Yeah, no, I have. I have to. And I try to get my husband to shift too, but he's not wanting to shift as much as I am. And I'm really trying to remember and remind myself, like, it's more about the health, the total health. And so for me, it's really become my sanity. I have a noticeable difference in my mental space when I don't exercise or when something, interrupts that, which usually it doesn't because I'm like very much I'm a scheduler and a planner and I know how important it is for me. So that's definitely my biggest escape. Okay. I guess spending time with my family too. Okay. I spend a lot of hours at soccer games, but to me, it really is like so enjoyable. And, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, definitely times where I'm complaining because I have to drive on a Saturday, like, hours and hours to get to places. But the time that I have with my kids in doing that are times that I'll always have memories of. And I look back at my family and how much my parents did for me. And those are the times that as an adult now, I look back on fondly with my parents. And when you're in the moment, you're just kind of like, Dad, Mom, drive me to wherever I need to go. Like, you're really just like an angsty teenager who can't be bothered with, because I own 2 of them and it's challenging. But I can only hope that my boys will look back on those moments and they'll know that those were really the most valuable times. And I'm telling you, I get so many, I like to refer to it as parenting in the cracks.
Okay.
Car rides.
Yeah.
Running errands to the store. Mom, can you take me to go to, Wawa to get gum? I'm usually like, yes, let's go, because I know it's an opportunity for a conversation. So, those are kinds of the ways that I kind of mentally take it down. Cool. But, I mean, I'm pretty much a go, go, go all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I go and then I fall asleep.
Hey, everybody's different, and I think that you own that. You know what
absolutely.
works for you
Yep.
and what doesn't work for you,
Yep.
for sure. So, Jess, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for
Such
having
great
me.
nuggets of information. I
Yeah.
can't wait to share with just the people in your organization, the boys and your family, to see you just have a lot to say and a lot to teach, and it's been a journey
Yes,
watching
my husband
you.
often says I have a lot to say, so
Yeah.
he will agree with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ann.
Awesome.